Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. Happy 4th of July, Independence Day to everybody listening here in the U.S. I know we have some people elsewhere, but everyone in the U.S., happy 4th of July. As you can see here, my co-host Joe Clark above me on the screen is taking advantage of some of that nice weather up in Boston. Streaming from outside today. Got the shades on. Nice look there, Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to take advantage of the weather one of these days. Get a good venue change for sure.
Yeah, nice. That is not a virtual background. He is, in fact, outside there. So, we're going to keep it kind of short today. I know people are probably out doing other things than looking at the Steelers, which is understandable. So we're just going to cruise through some of our topics here. But the first thing that we wanted to talk about, we kind of touched on it last episode, but we conducted a all-time Steelers draft. I think when was that now? Like a week, little over a week ago. We would have done that. 6 of us. So Scott Brown, our editor, Alex Kozora, Josh Carney, me, Joe. Did I miss somebody? I think that was everybody.
Yeah, that was 6
That is
teams.
all 6 there, and so. We conducted our all-time drafts. It was a snake draft format. We had a kind of a randomized draft order. Joe ended up with the first pick. I ended up with the third pick. And we selected our teams one round at a time. And, we're trying to build the best team possible. And so this wasn't just picking necessarily the best Steelers of all time in that exact order. You did have to take into account some of the positional value, some of the scarcity. I think we all found out that, certain positions like maybe offensive guard, offensive tackle, even perhaps like defensive line, kind of defensive ends. There's a lot of good players up at the top, but it got pretty thin pretty quickly. I think we all kind of felt that with certain positions that we maybe waited a little too long for. And so I just wanted to talk about my team, Joe's team, and then kind of the team that each of us picked as the best overall team once it was all said and done. There are articles up on the site that you can go view the full results, and I will flash the graphics up on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube so you can see exactly what we are talking about here. But I'm going to go ahead and start with my team here. Just run through the list of names real quick. Quarterback, Neil O'Donnell. Wasn't super thrilled with that necessarily, but once Josh took Cordell Stewart, my options were pretty much Neil O'Donnell or, Bubby Brister or somebody like that. So I decided to take Neil O'Donnell so I didn't have to figure out what it was. After that, Alex ended up taking the last quarterback off the board. He was able to wait till the last round because everybody had already grabbed their quarterback. My run backs, I had Le'Veon Bell. I had Rocky Bleier. A lot of people went with a third receiver for their flex spot. I took a fullback. Basically, because I got Neil O'Donnell, I wanted to have a strong running team, and so I built my team around kind of that fullback, kind of 21 personnel kind of identity. And so Rocky Bleier, I was very happy with that. Le'Veon Bell, we all know when he was in his prime, there were very few as good as him. Beyond just the Steelers roster, I mean, really of all time, Le'Veon Bell was on some crazy paces when he was at his brief prime with the team. I got Heath Miller. There weren't that many good tight ends, so I took him kind of early. My receivers, Mike Wallace, Ron Shanklin. Again, wasn't really focused on the passing attack of my team, so that group leaves a little to want. My offensive line, Max Starks, John Jackson, David DeCastro, Isaac Seumalo, and Jeff Hardings. I feel pretty good about. Overall, might be one of the better offensive lines of the 6 teams that we put up, and I wanted to get some big guys that could power a strong running team. On defense, I had Stephon Tuitt, Kevin Henry, and Gerald Williams on my defensive line. James Harrison, Alex Highsmith, Jack Lambert, and Vince Williams as my linebackers. Rod Woodson and Joe Hayden in the secondary. Ryan Clark, Paul Martha, who often gets forgotten but was a solid player for the Steelers and a Pitt product back in the day. Sean Sweesham as my kicker, Craig Colquitt as my punter, Jared Retkovsky, a literal furniture mover, but a Super Bowl champion at long snapper. And then I had Emmanuel Sanders as my return guy. I would say overall, my team, my defense started off pretty well. I went defense, I think, with like my first 3 or 4 picks, kind of ignoring the offense, and then I started to see the receivers start to fly off the board. The good quarterbacks were already gone, and so I pivoted pretty heavily to a run team. I want to tell a quick story about Le'Veon Bell. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I know that's maybe not the most popular take, but just watching him and his style of play, it was, it was so unique the way that he would wait in the backfield, pick his spots, and then, pretty consistently be able to come out of the other side of the play with a 4 or 5 yard gain. He wasn't an explosive runner. He didn't have that many explosive plays, but few were as patient and as successful with kind of getting those 4 or 5 yards. I wanted to show, I have a little prop here today, but I have this signed Le'Veon Bell print that hangs on my wall behind me. Some of you may have seen it in some of the other episodes. A fun story about the Le'Veon Bell print on my wall. My parents actually got that for me at a silent auction, and I believe they got it. It would have been before the season that he ended up sitting out. What was that, 2018? 2018 that Le'Veon Bell ended up sitting out entirely. So they got it for me before the season started at a silent auction, and their goal was to give it to me as a Christmas gift. And so by the time I got it at Christmas, it was already clear that Le'Veon Bell had played his last snap with the Steelers. And so here I am with a signed Le'Veon Bell print on my wall that at the time was that my parents just basically watched it diminish in value rapidly over the course of basically 6 months leading up to Christmas. So that was I still enjoy it, but it was kind of a funny way to get that gift. Joe, what about your team? Who are some of your favorite picks on your team? You have a really strong group, really no weaknesses overall, but what do you think about your team there?
Yeah, so I guess as you can see now, my plan to enjoy the weather went awry with my phone overheating, but I do love my team. Some of my favorite pick is probably Ernie Holmes, key member of the Steel Curtain defense. I think I got him pretty late, so I really like having him to anchor my defense in the middle. And then Marvell Smith and Tunch Ilkin I took back to back. I didn't really want to worry about the tackle position, especially because I think the Steelers, there's not a lot of good historical tackle depth, so didn't want to worry about it. Marvel Smith could have been better if not for injuries. Tunch was a great player. So 2 guys I'm glad to have, protect Big Ben. That was kind of a key for me. That's why I went Dirk Dawson right after Dave took Mike Webster. Didn't want to miss out on one of the top centers, even though there is some depth in the center position, excuse me. But I wanted to get one of the top guys. And then I'm really happy with my receiver core. I like getting Juju late with Plaxico and Louis Lips. So that's a pretty solid group that I'm excited about. I do wish I took Mike Meyerweather instead of Jason Worlds, but that was a mistake. Jason Worlds had a solid peak, 25 and a half sacks, I believe, in his Steelers career. But that's probably the one pick I regret. And I could probably have done better at corner with Ike Taylor and William Gay, but I am happy with how my team ended up turning out.
Yeah, and we each voted on kind of our favorite team that wasn't our own. We couldn't vote ourselves, and I actually chose Alex's team. And, if you look at I was actually pretty close to choosing your team, Joe. I mean, it's hard to pass up on Ben Roethlisberger and Franco Harris, and you just really don't have a obvious weakness on your unit. And Alex, like I said earlier, he took the last quarterback of anybody and took Jim Finks, who was a Pro Bowler at one point, and so I get his line of thinking there. But I do think that Alex's quarterback will be looking pretty good due to having Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, and Yancey Thigpen as his receivers. And so this whole exercise, we kind of are adjusting for eras. Obviously, some of these guys would get absolutely demolished in today's game. Everybody's gotten bigger and faster and stronger and all of that. But, yeah, I liked Alex's team. He had 7 Hall of Famers on the squad, the most of anybody in this exercise. I believe my team only has 2. And so having 7, I mean, again, for even adjusting for era, 7 Hall of Famers is a pretty impressive squad there for Alex. So I did end up choosing his over yours. Joe, you chose Josh. What did you like about Josh's team?
I think it was Josh's defense and his speed that appealed to me. I think having Joe Green and Cam Hayward on that defensive line with Kevin Green and Chad Brown bringing Blitzberg back on defense. And then you obviously have Jack Ham and Carnell Lake and Mike Wagner at safety. That's a really impressive defense. And then obviously, you have Cordell Stewart. You can do a lot with him. Willie Parker. Um, Two receivers I liked in Hines Ward and Santonio Holmes. So I think it was just the defense was really impressive to me with Green, Ham, Hayward, even Larry Foote's a solid player, and then Kevin Green as well. Yeah, the two Greens and Chad Brown, the two great outside linebackers. So the defense was really what stood out to me originally, and then I just like the element of thinking about what he could potentially do on offense. So that's kind of where my head went and why I took Josh's team.
Yeah, we had a great time doing this exercise overall. It was Alex's idea. It took us, the better part of a whole day to get through the whole draft because, we had other things that we needed to get done. And so that kind of held up the process at times, but it was a whole lot of fun. We hope you guys enjoyed reading and voting on those teams. And I think we even maybe talked about all coming on the Terrible Podcast at some point this during the rest of this slow off season to talk about our team. So maybe something to look forward to there. I did want to move into our next topic, and this is kind of the only maybe current Steelers topic on the agenda today. Ray Fittipaldo went on The Fan yesterday and basically speculated that the Steelers might have to rebuild their defensive line through free agency due to some of their draft miscues. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that and kind of the outlook of the defensive line. Obviously, it's one of the most important positions on the defense. I mean, they kind of set the tone with stopping the run, disrupting the pocket, making sure the quarterback's not having a good time back there, getting the pass off, and so especially in the 3-4 system, they need solid defensive line play to free up the inside linebackers and even the outside linebackers to make the plays, and so having kind of a rough outlook on the defensive line could spell trouble for the Steelers. Now, they could turn to the draft in the future next year as early as round 1, I would guess. But do you think that they're going to need to make a big swing in free agency and bring in one of these kind of top-tier guys as early as next March?
No, not really at all, especially when you look at the strength of next year's draft class. Steelers have the misses in recent years have really hurt their depth. The Marvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk. I mean, he was a later round guy. You didn't really expect a ton out of him, but he still hasn't been anything special. Leal, third round pick. You obviously expect a lot more than what you've got out of him. And we saw some flashes his rookie season, but he moved around. It was a disappointment. Was a game day inactive last year, so that one's tough. But the draft next year is strong with defensive line depth. You still have Keanu Benton, who's a young emerging player. You still have Cam Hayward, who, at least you can, if let's say it's time to an extension, I think it's probably going to happen. You get at least probably 2 more decent years out of him. You can draft and develop, even if you take 2 defensive linemen next year. It's not something that they should rule out. They like taking defensive linemen. They just have to take one earlier, I guess, next year probably than they have. I know Benton was a second round pick. Stephon Tuitt was a second round pick. Leal was a third, but maybe you target the position in the first next year. But I don't really think it's going to be something that has to be rebuilt through free agency. I mean, you can add depth through free agency and maybe better depth than they did this year. I know Dean Lowry, he kind of fits the system, but maybe, a step above that for a depth guy. But I don't really think it's going to have to be a big focus in free agency. I think they'll be able to rebuild through the draft, and they still have, a couple pieces in place right now that can be guys for them for the next 2 to 3 seasons, and probably a little bit longer. So I'm intrigued. I mean, obviously Logan Lee's a rookie. I know 5th or 6th round pick, tough to, really rely on him, but you don't want to write a guy off before his career starts either. So then another piece to consider, at least along the defensive line right now.
Yeah, to me, I'm kind of torn on this, whether or not they're going to need to add somebody. I mean, Larry Ogunjobi could very well be off the team. I mean, he's under contract in 2025, but he's largely underperformed that contract extension he received last year. And so this is a guy who could be on his way out after this season, especially if he underperforms once again. Cam Hayward, yeah, I mean, hopefully he does resign and hopefully he does remain good, but I don't know if you can count on either of those two things at this point in time, 100%. And so, Keanu Benton is the only player that you can confidently say in 2 years from now is going to be on the roster of all of these guys. Isaiah Loudermilk's in his last year right now, almost certainly won't receive an extension. DeMarvin Leal, I mean, there's been more positive reports about him this time around. Last year, they talked about him showing up to training camp out of shape. This year, I believe in that same interview with Fittipaldo yesterday, he did say Leal showed up in the best shape that he's ever shown up in. So that is positive. Maybe he is kind of turning things around and focused and locked in this offseason. And so, if Leal is able to turn things around and even become an average contributor, that obviously buys the Steelers some time to draft, over the next couple of years before Leal would ultimately probably move on from the team. And so I'm a little bit torn. I mean, you look at the market value for the top kind of defensive linemen. I mean, we saw what Ogunjobi has kind of gotten us for the price tag, and that wasn't cheap. It wasn't outrageous, but it wasn't cheap at all. And so you do need to shell out a lot of cash to get one of these top defensive linemen. Looking at the market this year in free agency, most of those top guys were going for, at least like 13, 14, 15 million and kind of extending all the way up to the 20 million range per season. And that is kind of a tough pill to swallow for the Steelers if they do end up needing to go that route. And so I think Leal this year is going to be very important in that conversation. He needs to at least become a serviceable or at least a replacement level player in order for the Steelers to not have that sense of urgency. I mean, you look at Cam Hayward, the first how many seasons of his career, I mean, he really didn't break out until, he had 1 sack in his rookie year, 1.5 in his second year. He went up to 5 in year 3, 7.5 in year 4. It wasn't until really his fifth, sixth, and his true breakout when he hit double-digit sacks was his 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th season, it looks like. So, I mean, I know the game's changed a little bit. Some of that had to do with the guys that were on the roster ahead of him at that time. It didn't make sense to get him on the field right away and all of that. But defensive linemen, the Steelers kind of have a type. They like to draft these athletic freaks, and I think they kind of value that more than they maybe even value the college production. They kind of look at the potential of these players, and so to draft somebody high, they might need a little bit of time. And so that's kind of why I lean towards maybe they do go in free agency, especially if they end up having to cut an Ogunjobi. But this will be a conversation that continues and becomes more clear based on what they do with Hayward, based on how Leal performs. By February of next year, we should have a pretty good idea of what the Steelers need to get done at that position. But it's certainly, outside of receiver, you could argue one of the biggest kind of question marks moving forward beyond 2024 for the Steelers. And I did want to highlight, they have drafted a defensive lineman every single season since Cam Hayward was taken in the 2011 draft in the first round. They've drafted one every season except for 2017. And a lot of those guys, I mean, you're talking about Alameda Ta'amu, Nick Williams, Stephon Tuitt, Daniel McCullers, L.T. Walton, Javon Hargrave, Josh Frazier, Isaiah Buggs, Carlos Davis. I mean, a couple of hits in there. Tuitt was great. Hargrave was great, but, they obviously let Hargrave walk. Tuitt unfortunately retired early. He had that injury, and he had some family tragedy that kind of took his attention away from the game. You can't blame him there, but largely they've kind of trended towards drafting these guys late and hoping to develop them based on their physical tools. And that strategy has mostly amounted to nothing. I mean, none of these late round guys have really worked out. I believe I believe Nick Williams is actually still enjoying a decent career in the NFL, but other than
Yeah, he's
that,
he's carved one out.
yeah, other than that, most of these guys are not in the league or kind of on their way out, not really amounting to much. And so they are going to have to revamp how they are building the defensive line, and that is going to have to start as soon as next offseason. And so that'll be one of the big storylines to track kind of next year. We're going to move into our final topic here, and this is not Steelers related, but we wanted to have a little fun today, given that it is a holiday, and keep the show kind of brief. But we wanted to talk about our favorite cookout options for the 4th of July. Joe, I believe you are on your way to a cookout immediately following this podcast. And so what are some of the items that you're hoping are going to be available to you on the grill?
Yeah, and here's maybe my hot take is that on the 4th of July, it's hot outside. You don't want to eat a ton of food when you're outside. So like I love a good barbecue, like brisket, ribs, all that. Like there's not a lot of it good around here, but my dad had us as a smoker, so it's good to eat all that stuff. But on the 4th of July, I'm really a tried and true kind of hot dog hamburger guy. You're outside, it's hot, maybe with a side of pasta salad. You just don't want to eat too much, outside. You get the meat sweats. I mean, trust me, I love to eat. You don't get a body like this without eating a lot. But I think a little later on the 4th, well, if you're eating outside, is kind of the way to go.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was at a cookout last night, and it was, the sun was down, but it was somehow still in the 90s with heavy humidity. And man, I'm like one hot dog in and just not enjoying myself in that humidity. But you might be aware of this, but my favorite cookout item, it comes from Maine, which is sort of in your neck of the woods. I don't know how far that is from you, but you're up there in New England. They have these red hot wieners in Maine that they are known for.
Yep,
Have you ever had any of
yep.
those?
Oh yeah, yeah. I went
Yeah.
last year. I went to a Maine Red Claws game, and I was shocked that they even had them there. Yeah, they're all over Maine, or I guess they're the Maine Celtics now, not the Red Claws. But oh yeah, they're those are awesome. The red snappy dogs are
Yeah,
fantastic.
that's right. Yeah, we used to vacation every year at a lake in Maine called Moosehead Lake. I don't know where in Maine that is, but that was a favorite of mine growing up, and definitely I looked into ordering some. You have to get them shipped in, but I didn't end up pulling the trigger. Maybe next year I will. Our family's also a big baked beans family. My mom makes fun of my dad's side of the family. We have baked beans with every holiday. It's on the Christmas table. It's on the Thanksgiving table. It's on pretty much any table at any family gathering for us. And so baked beans is another must-have for us. I think that is all for our show today. I do hope you guys enjoy your 4th of July. Stay safe. Hope you enjoy some fireworks. Hope you enjoy some good company, some good food. Make sure to give our number at the bottom of the screen a call, 412-254-3145. Leave us a question. We will be back to our normal kind of length of show and more Steelers-centric topics next week. Training camp is just a few weeks away, and so the slow season is coming to an end, thank God, before too long. We are tired of talking about the same old few topics that are rumbling around the national media, and so that is something I'm sure we are all looking forward to. I'm Ross McCorkle, that's Joe Clark, and we will catch you next time.